dysfunctional bed here. I have two of these 6 or 7 inch, 8 inch, whatever they are, utility poles that I'll be setting up. I will actually videotape how I'm actually raising these because somebody somewhere might want to see it. I did a short video on how I raised a utility pole with a white paper, and on that one I had a very secure anchor point. That is, I had a tree to work from, and so I didn't really record that because generally speaking most people probably don't have trees everywhere. And once you see how I raised this one, you'll be able to see how I did the tree one. But let's move to what I'm doing. I have a rotted board on my cabin. It's on the foundational structural support, and I have to replace it. I went to a place called Hicks, and I got these 2x6 by 20s, and this is actual true 2x6 by 20s. Fold this tripod up here, and I'm in the process of using these to replace that one board. These other ones that I have will become supports for a roof over a porch that I'm in the process of building, which I'll show you later if I can get the dogs out of the way. As I have stated in the past, I live in a forest, and trees die. The people out here want the trees down because a dead tree is just taking up space. So they want them down so they can clean stuff out and get stuff growing again. In this case, I have actually a total of 3. I'm not showing one of them. And all of these are a little bit longer than 7 feet. What I'm doing is I'm using my HM 126. I'm using my HM 126 Woodland Mill saw to plane 2 surfaces so that I can get dunnage out of this. And I'll show you that in just a moment. These trees are recently dead. This one right here, let me zoom in on it. This one right here looks a little bit pithy, but it's actually structurally sound. It's good wood. There's nothing wrong with it. And I can use this as dunnage so that I can raise my jack up considerable height before I start lifting on the foundation. This will give me a good, solid, broad-based surface to work from. Now let's look at what I'm actually doing once I'm planing these babies. Here I have a log slightly longer than 7 feet, but not by much. And as you can see, I've flattened 2 surfaces. I've flattened the surface down here, the surface up here. Next thing I need to do is just square this off on each side, just a very, very little bit. The purpose of that is so that it can fit closely together when I start my lift on what I'm picking up. Again, this is dunnage. It doesn't have to be great, it just needs to be able to provide a secure base from which to lift. Now, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be cutting these into 14-inch lengths. So I'm going to go ahead and mark where I want to cut it before I trim the rest of this, and we'll get that done right now. If you're wondering how I was able to just walk up to the thing and cut the points so quickly on the tape, my math skills are probably as good as the average person without any. What I did was I ran a table using GW Basic, which is a basic programming language, and I started with 14 inches, added 14, and I ran it using a for next loop until I had about 10 feet of log in case in the event I ever used 10 feet. I saved the table, I made notes, and I've got a card that you can't see that tells me exactly how many inches each one of these are. The next thing to do is to rotate this up on edge to make this edge somewhat smooth so that when I start putting the blocks on the ground they fit close together. And then I'll come back, I'll use a chainsaw on my lines and I'll cut these into 14-inch square or 14-inch long dunnage, which I will use when I start the lift on my cabin. Something I want to discuss. This side right here is pretty rough cut. Down here it's somewhat smooth. Up there it's not so much smooth. So what I will be doing is I'm going to plane this off a couple of cuts until I figure out exactly where I want to get this cut. I want as much width as possible so the thing is stable. On this side over here, there's not really any big story to tell. This is pretty much smooth. So once I get this side over here planed off so that it's uniform, then I will turn this to the bottom. I'll turn this up. I'll smooth this other side, and then I'll go ahead and use the chainsaw to cut these into pieces. At this point right here, I'm about to start planing, and I'm just going to be cutting a few pieces at a time, thin pieces, because I want to save as much width as I can. The other side is basically very flat and level. This one is the most, it's got the most amount of geographical changes in altitude when facing in this orientation. So I want to cut off as little as possible, but I want the pieces to fit as close together when they're butted up together to build my dunnage. So I'm going to turn the camera off for a moment, get the thing started, and then I'll turn it back on and I'll show you the planing process. As you can see, I made two very thin planing passes. This is my first planing pass right here. This is my second. Now, it's not the full length of the thing, but it's close. And as you can see, I have a nice flat surface that will butt up together when I start stacking this. The next thing to do is to flip this over and to plane the other side, and then to cut these into my 14-inch dunnage. The surfaces are smooth and it's sitting flat on top of all three of these supports. So now I'll dog it down and I'll plane it. basically made two cuts identical to the other side. So now I have a nice square flat surface that will fit together. I'm going to run a little bit of cuprinol on this just to help preserve it while it's in contact with the ground. Although it's not going to be there very long, I don't want insects to decide that they can move into it once I put this into storage. The cuprinol is 8 ounces of copper sulfonate from Poles Incorporated, or Poles LLC, to 1 gallon of diesel. And I use a 2-roller system. I'll show you that in about 10 seconds. And I do recommend the double roller. You're going to have to do an internet search for them. I looked on Amazon because I've already got an account there. It's quick and easy to buy. They had one without the rollers, but I found them for I think $1.17 less on another website. So if I remember, I'll put that link to that other website in the video. The tractor is running in the background. You can clearly hear it. I'm getting ready to take these and drive them around and dump them off where I need them, just so I don't have to use a two-wheeler and fight my dogs. What I wanted to express is the HM 126 by Woodland Mills has been a lifesaver. I've cut white oak with it. I've cut red oak with it. I am not exactly sure what it cost. Somebody who saw the wood that I had cut and I paneled the inside of my cabin with told me that it was somewhere between $80,000 and $120,000 of wood. Now this is back before all the price increases. My saw was bought in 2012. It cost somewhere between $3,000 and $5,000. I don't remember what I paid. Now that includes shipping, and had to pay tariffs because it came out of Canada before they had a U.S. office. And it has been worth it. $3,000 to $5,000 for 80 to a phenomenally huge 100,000 worth of oak that I've handled my cabin with, and all the other stuff I've done. Plus now I'm making this dunnage. It's all uniformed, it will fit tight, it will work. I really want to press, if you have the space for a sawmill, I think, and you have access to trees, I think it's worth your time to buy one. The Wood Miser will have a number like a Wood Miser 140 or something like that, or a Wood Miser 26 or something. That number tells you how many thousand it's going to cost you. It's my understanding a 140 will be $140,000, a Wood Miser 26 will be $26,000. I do not recommend that you buy a sawmill from Harbor Freight unless you have the ability to do the repairs. I've just seen way too many reviews on the Harbor Freight sawmill when it comes time to replace something. The Harbor Mills is a knockoff of the Woodland Mills, but the problem is the parts are not interchangeable. The track, that's your track. The track is a different scale, the wheels are a different scale. Everything about it is totally and completely different. But I do recommend, if you have the time, the space, and you have access to trees, get a sawmill. And if you're going to try to make your money as a sawyer, you need to really do your research and find out what you're getting into and buy an upgrade. The Woodland Mills is basically a hobbyist sawmill, and I have done a lot of work with it. Like I told you, I cut the paneling for the entire inside of my cabin. But it's not something that you can use for heavy production, especially if you're like a one-man operation. Cutting wood is really a two-person operation, and I am straddled, if you will, with 13 dogs. With that said, I'm going to go dump this, and I'm going to get the next one, throw it on the sawmill. I'm going to square it up, similar to this, and then we're going to start working on the cabin. But I do want to recommend, if you have the money, if you have the space, and you have access to trees, get a sawmill. With that said, dysfunctional vet is out.